Okay, so welcome back to the Development Blueprint. This is lecture three, I believe, lecture three. So last one was going into what is hypertrophy a bit and the actual basic foundations of muscle building. So now we have to look at the other side of that coin of how can you adjust your nutrition accordingly and how macronutrient control drives muscle growth, as it states there. Because you can train as well as you want to, you can train absolutely stellar, perfect, progress and everything. Well, you wouldn't be able to progress everything if your nutrition is not in check, but you can do all of those things. But if your nutrition is not accommodating that, then you're not going to fucking grow, basically. So, off to a great start, swimming already. Nice. So, first of all, we have the purpose of this lecture. So we want to actually quantify the intake for an 80 kilogram athlete. So that's just like with all the numbers you're about to see, it's going to be for someone that's around about 80 kilos, which is most men, to be fair. So that's going to be like the rough sort of numbers that I'm working off, just to be able to say a figure here or there, just so there is an actual number that I can relate it back to. To explain macronutrient ratios for training versus rest days, because your macronutrient intake should be different on a training day versus a rest day. If it's not, then you're doing something very, very wrong. Because if you look at your training day versus your rest day, you're doing different things. You're training on one day, you're not training on the other day. They should be different, and your nutrition should reflect that. And understanding why calorie composition shifts as activity shifts as well. So obviously, the different levels of activity you're doing, you need to accommodate that via your nutrition and your hydration. So first of all, we have energy balance. Now, this is just energy balance as a whole. So how much calories are you actually consuming? Because at the end of the day, it is weight loss and weight gain is just energy balance. It's calories in versus calories out. So that is going to be the sole dictator whether you are gaining weight or losing weight. Notice how I said weight, not fat or not muscle. That is dictated by your macronutrient breakdown, how much protein, how much carbs, and the balance there. Okay, so say for example, like this is all a rough example. This is not your maintenance. This is not your surplus. This is an average. Okay, an average guy. So if his maintenance is 2,600 calories, if he's a 80 kilogram male, fairly active, maintenance is going to be around about there. Surplus will then kick him up plus 300, so just under 3K on a training day. Then obviously slightly lower intake then on a rest day because you're doing less. Yeah, you don't need that. You're not training. You'll burn 4, 5, 600 calories training if you're training very, very well, which you're not going to be doing on a rest day. So why would you have the same amount of energy? It just doesn't make sense. So a lot of people disregard that, but it's a very, very important factor. So yeah, slightly lower intake, 2,700 on a rest day. So target rate of gain really for a natural athlete, 0.25 to 0.5% of body weight per week. That's a sort of good rule of thumb. Okay, so that's what we want to be looking at. If you're gaining a hell of a lot more body weight than that, you can only accrue muscle tissue at a certain rate, like we discussed in the previous lecture. So it's not going to be that lean tissue that you're putting on. It's going to be adipose, which is not what we want. Not only will it cut your gaining phase shorter, but you'll just have to diet it off anyway. So it's just a bit of a waste of time, and you're making the subsequent diet just a lot harder for you. So manage your energy balance, okay? So, first of all, protein intake. Protein. What is protein? What does it do? So, 2.2 to 2.5 gram per kilogram is a good rule of thumb, again, for a natural athlete. Enhanced guys obviously have the capacity to have a higher muscle protein synthesis level throughout the day just due to higher IGF-1 levels in the blood, all things like that. And your ability to use protein to repair muscle is just higher. But these are numbers for naturals. 175 to 200 grams per day for an 80 kilogram athlete is pretty cool. I personally like to run that slightly on the higher end, oftentimes north of 200, especially if they're dieting. It just helps. Well, there is some things to say that it helps with muscle preservation in a diet, and protein is satiating. It digests fairly slow, obviously depending on the protein that you're having, but it helps with satiety and it helps preserve muscle, especially as calories come down. Keeping protein high is a very, very important factor. And that doesn't change, really, okay? You want to be roughly the same protein rest day and training day. So that's constant every day. Provides amino acids for repair and muscle protein synthesis. So that's basically what is growing you. That is repairing your muscles, making them bigger, making them stronger, more resilient, which is hypertrophy, and that's what we need. So protein intake is the sole sort of factor of hypertrophy and how much muscle you're going to build. Okay, a lot of people will say they struggle to eat this amount. They just don't want it enough because that's not hard. Okay, it's really not hard. Just stop eating like a child, and you will find you're very much easily hitting 175 to 200 grams per day of protein. So yeah, protein stays stable, drives recovery regardless of whether you're training on that day or not. Your body is still recovering from the sessions throughout that week, so you still need to maintain that level of protein to keep up regulating that MPS every couple of hours. Okay, MPS, muscle protein synthesis. So carbohydrates on a training day. 4 to 6 grams per kilogram is cool for a start point. Fuels training performance, glycogen restoration, and cell volume. So basically how much intracellular water you have, how much glycogen you have, that fullness look that you get. Obviously, then higher carbohydrate intake on training days maintains intensity and recovery. Also, just energy levels in general. If you're having higher carbs on a day, like you'll notice this if you're in a dieting phase and you have a higher carb day, you will just generally feel better in yourself because you're going from that depleted state to then a super compensated effect of you're having, say, 500 grams of carbs. Each gram of carb is pulling in roughly 4 grams of water into the muscle. You get that pop, you get that energy, you feel like you can walk through fucking cement, you can walk through a cinder block wall. Yeah, it's just it's a cool thing to have experience in your own physique. So yeah, that's the start point. But carbohydrates do fluctuate heavily. This is sort of the macronutrient that you'll play with, whether, like we said above, plus or minus 300 calories. Carbohydrates will really be the ones that are moved up or moved down to match sort of where we want to take body weight. Okay, so they fuel training performance, glycogen restoration, having depleted glycogen stores through training, or just prolonged dieting, and cell volume as well. Okay, so carbohydrates on a non-training day, not as high. Okay, not as high. This is what I see in a lot of cases. 2.5 to 3.5 grams per kilo is cool. But again, that's heavily dictated on your overall energy balance. And the carb number will sort of filter in once you've got protein and once you've got fats in a correct spot. You just make the rest up out of carbohydrates, basically. Okay, so lower because glycogen use is reduced, of course. You still have your cardio on your rest days, you still have your step count, but you're not going through an intense training session, so your glycogen stores are not really getting depleted. Okay, but still, we're not going keto on rest days. We still need to maintain a decent level of energy balance. Otherwise, your body weight will just be yo-yoing throughout the week, and it's very, very hard to get data from there. And then they're also reduced because it prevents unnecessary fat gain while maintaining baseline energy for recovery purposes. So you want to find that happy medium of, yes, you're maintaining, but you're not pushing things really, really high on a rest day just because you're not moving as much, you're not training, you're not burning as much calories, basically. You're doing less, so you're going to eat less. Very, very straightforward, okay? But it's something a lot of people sort of neglect. So fats on a training day, 0.8 to 1 gram per kilo, 65 to 80 grams a day. I, again, tend to run the lower end of that with clients, with myself, just because I prefer higher carbs, especially on a training day. This is what I'm talking about on a training day. Supports hormone production and nutrient absorption as well. So, like, you need some fats. I know fats are like criminalized as, oh, stop eating fats. You know, that fats make you fat. They don't. Energy balance makes you fat, and a disrupted energy balance makes you fat, not fats as a macronutrient. There is never one sole macronutrient that makes you fat. So like when people say, oh, cut carbs are bad, carbs make you fat. No, actually, carbs are your body's main sort of energy source. If you didn't have carbs, you wouldn't feel very good. So don't cut a whole macronutrient out. It's not a very bright idea. But yeah, 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So for an 80 kg male, 65 to 80 grams a day. Supports hormone production and nutrient absorption. It also can be utilized in a dieting phase to slow the absorption of meals as well. Because fats are obviously digested at a slower rate than carbs and protein, they almost slow the rate of your digestion of the carbohydrates. So it slows gastric emptying slightly, keeping you fuller for a little bit longer. So it is important to have fats in all your meals, or most of your meals. Slightly moderated, so digestive load doesn't impair training or appetite. That's why you're running them lower on training days than rest days. Okay. So fats on a non-training day, slightly higher, 1 to 1.2 gram per kilo. Like I said, all of these numbers are rough gauges. Okay, find what works for you, but these are good guidelines. So that would be for an 80 kilogram male, 80 grams of fat to 95 grams of fat per day. So energy source to compensate for the reduced carbs on rest days, because we don't need that much carbs. So fats can afford to go up, and then we'll still be in our overall energy balance where we want to be. Higher fat intake stabilizes hormones and maintains caloric balance in a slightly lower carb environment again. Now, because I run fats not very low, but on the lower end of the spectrum on training days, and that's what I find to prefer, and that's what I find in clients to prefer as well. I like running them a bit higher then on the rest days, just to compensate and get your weekly fats in. Especially useful if you're using, well, it would be useful to use an omega-3, a good quality fish oil as well, just to help top things up again. And fats are nice. They taste good. Your almond butters, your peanut butters, your avocados, your fatty fishes, your salmons, all things like that. Your oats, even, there's plenty of trace fats in oats. So yeah, eat your fats because they are important, and don't demonize them. So hydration, 1 to 1.5 litres per 20 kilograms of body weight. That's usually what I use to go off. But again, it's one of those, basically, drink when you're thirsty. Okay, when you're thirsty, so just drink when you're thirsty and don't overly deep it. Okay, as long as you're having around about that number. So for an 80 kilogram male, that's around about 4 to 5 litres, depending on obviously whether you're the lower end or the higher end. 4 to 5 litres is sound. Okay, people really do deep total water intake a lot more than is necessary, and then they end up stressing over it, which then stress, cortisol spike, you end up looking worse. So don't deep it too much. 4 litres is sound. 4 to 6 is a good number for everyone, really. Anything north of sort of 8 to 10, you will struggle to maintain good electrolyte balance, just because you're pissing so much. There's only so much vitamin C and electrolytes you can take in order to maintain your electrolyte balance when you're drinking 8 to 10 litres of water, unless obviously you're in a competition prep and then you're honing in on your hydration and electrolyte balance a lot more. This isn't about that. This is about Gen Pop. Okay, maintaining sodium, potassium, magnesium balance, that is proper hydration. Okay, it's not just how much water you drink. It's, are you salting your food adequately? Are you having an hydration supplement? Now, there is ways to test your hydration, but they are all a bit so 4 to 6 litres, salt your food, have a hydration sip. 9 times out of 10, actually 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to be sufficiently hydrated. Okay, now hydration in a dieting phase, especially when things are getting tight and you're feeling the pinch a bit, water can be a good tool to just sort of satisfy you. Like if you're feeling hungry or you're feeling the pinch, just go have a glass of water and grow up. Like that's, I actually said that in a sentence to somebody before that was struggling, and they were like, yeah, but I'm fucked in the night times. Like come 9 p.m, I'm super, super hungry. I've ate all my food. So then like you have to make the decision, are you going to cheat on your diet, or are you going to go and have a big glass of water and shut up, basically? And he chose the latter, and he looks sick off the back of that. It's that easy. But yeah, it's a good tool to use. It's just like filling the stomach volume up again, tricking your body into thinking that you've ate something when you haven't. It's cool. Okay, same requirement again on both days. Muscle repair and digestion rely on fluid balance. If you're dehydrated, everything else goes to shit pretty much. Headaches, training goes to shit. Your digestion is going to be slower because you're not in that state of homeostasis. So just 4 to 6 litres, salt your food, have a hydration sip in the morning if you want, have it while you're training if you want. It's really straightforward, and people do deep it a bit more than is necessary. So nutrient timing, a very, very important one, especially if you are honing in on all of these variables. Pre-training, higher carbs means more glycogen, which means a stronger performance and a better pump as well. So throughout your day, you might go 5 meals a day. Say your total across the day is 400 grams of carbs. You might go 70 grams meal 1, 70 grams meal 2, 70 grams meal 3, 100 grams meal 4, 100 grams meal 5, which is your pre and post training. You need to structure your carbohydrates like that to really maximize your training sessions. Not only pre-training, higher carbs, more glycogen, stronger performance, better pump, better training, but then post-training to obviously replenish those depleted glycogen stores from the training session, which leads to faster glycogen restoration, which is then quicker recovery and just filling you back up. Okay, unless you're in the back end of a dieting phase where you'll have about 10 carb post training. But yeah, this is for Gen Pop. Give your carbs a bit of a hit pre and post training and you'll be fine. Even intra carbs, especially when food is getting a bit higher and you really are looking to get the absolute most out of your training and your sessions, have 20 to 25, 30 grams of a carb powder, cyclic dextrin, maltodextrin, dextrose, even like people have Haribos and squeeze bars and stuff, but I would personally prefer to drink it. Especially like if your sessions are long, it is a good tool to be used. Or if you're going session to session, like I have a few athletic clients, they will go and have their gym session and then they'll go straight to their skill session in their desired sport. Now, in between, they don't want a meal. You don't want a meal. You're going to be running around with a stitch. You haven't got time to digest a meal. So a carb powder there, low volume, still giving you that energy that you need, that can be utilized there. Okay, so improves training intensity, the pump, and visually muscle fullness, and supports anabolic signaling, and which limits cortisol rise. So the fuller you are, basically, the more anabolic signaling is getting there because you're in a less catabolic state where your muscles are flat. So you want to stay muscularly full as much as you can if you're trying to grow. Okay. So this is an example of a caloric distribution for someone that would be around about 80 kilos. Okay, so training day, 200 protein, 400 carbs, 70 fat. Then what we just said, non-training day, protein staying the same, carbs reduced, fats increased. Why? Hormonal upregulation and less carbs to still bring up that total energy balance to just under the training day, because we don't need quite as much, but we still need a lot for overall weekly body weight stabilization and overall energy balance stabilization. But we're not training, like we said, so we're having reduced carbs and slightly higher fats. So yeah, and fats are nice as well. So why do we adjust it? Rest day to training day. Training day, prioritize glycogen and performance. Obviously, your training, that is hypertrophy. Everything you do should surround your training session in order to make that session as productive as it possibly can, because that is where you are signaling the most growth. Rest day then, prioritizing recovery. So you'll make up for the sort of not reduced, but lower end fats on training days by having that bit more on rest days. Prioritizing recovery, hormone support, and insulin sensitivity as well. So it just gives your pancreas a little bit of a break as well, especially if you're smashing 8, 9, 1,000 grams of carbs on a training day. If you're a very big individual, that can be reduced on a rest day. And it's kind of giving your pancreas a break. If you're having a kilogram of carbs a day, your pancreas on a training day, your pancreas is going to be working in overtime. So it's more than likely you're going to have to use some exogenous insulin sooner rather than later. But not many naturals will ever have to get up to that amount of carbohydrates anyway. So it's nice to reduce them slightly on a rest day to sort of keep that insulin sensitivity there. Okay, so alternating ratios improves nutrient partitioning as well, keeping you insulin sensitive, and it limits excess fat storage, which we don't need. Okay, like we talked about, if we are just smashing training day food on a rest day, we are just eating more for no valid reason. So we're going to cut our gaining phase shorter, we're going to have to diet sooner, and we're going to have to diet for longer because you're going to have more adipose tissue that has to come off. Now, weekly adjustment. So this is going a bit about whether you want to increase or decrease and what the signals are for increase or decrease. So track your 7-day average weight. Do not weigh in 1 day a week because there's 1,000,001 different variables that can affect a weigh in the next morning, especially if you have a kind of disrupted lifestyle. So 7-day average weight, so that means daily weigh-ins and then take an average across the week. Much more accurate system for data collection than one singular weigh-in day. It is not 1960. We don't do Weight Watchers, weekly weigh-ins, monthly weigh-ins anymore. Track your weight every day and look at the discrepancy. Okay. Not only that, it gives an more accurate reading, but you can then see which sessions are fatiguing you the most. Which sessions are spiking body weight a bit more, and it's sort of that local inflammation and fatigue and that will cause you to hold on to a bit more water, so we might see a bit of a body weight spike after certain sessions. Gives us a good gauge on how well you're recovering as well to see how quickly that drops back off. If your body weight is stagnant for more than 2 weeks, increase around about 150 calories a day from carbs. This is what I said. Carbs are the slider that increases whether we want energy balance to be in a surplus or in a deficit, or a slightly higher surplus or a slightly lower deficit. Carbs are the slider that we use to dictate that. Okay, so if your body weight's stagnant for more than 2 weeks, in whichever direction that you want, increase around about 150 calories from carbs. Okay, and then if fat gain is getting a bit too excessive, so we're gaining a bit too much, minus 150 calories a day from carbs. Okay, reduce carbs first. As it says, carbs are the slider. Keep protein static, manipulate carbs/fats only. Carbs first, then fats. Okay, fats can stay pretty much static unless things are getting very, very aggressive, where you'll look to reduce fats as well. But majoritively, we can use carbs as a slider to sort of dictate whether we want to be gaining weight or whether we want to be losing weight. So some common errors: keeping carbs equally high on rest days, unnecessary fat gain. We don't need that. You can't expect. That's like saying, okay, you're going on a 300-mile drive. Okay, that's your training session, is your 300-mile drive. You're going to fill your car up. Yeah, you're going to fill your car up with petrol because you're going on a really long, intense drive. Now, the next day, you might not be going on a drive. So why would you fill your car up? If that's a terrible analogy, I don't even know why I just thought of that, but it kind of doesn't make sense. Why are you filling your car up on a day where you're not doing anything? You know, it doesn't make sense. And what will happen? It will just go to waste, really. You're not using that. So yeah, that was a really bad analogy. My apologies, but it kind of makes sense. So yeah, fat spillover, basically excess adipose tissue gain, which then will subsequently have to be dieted off, and you will have to start dieting sooner rather than later. So dropping protein on rest days just means weaker recovery. Right now, I'm trialing slightly higher protein on rest days, for me personally, just to see how I feel with that. Really, it's cool so far because I like eating protein. I like eating whey. You know, chicken is nice, beef mince is nice. Yes, but that would then lead to weaker recovery. You definitely don't want lower protein on rest days. But there's a lot of studies now that are coming out that saying protein on in high caloric diets with such high levels of carbs, the protein is a bit less important if you're very, very high total calorically, because you're going to be in such an anabolic state that minimum effective protein is enough, but it's still not very that solidified. So just keep it as it is on the rest day. And ignoring hydration. So many people are just chronically dehydrated and they think that that's normal. It's not. If you are a advanced, not even advanced, a trainee in general, you go to the gym, you should be hydrated. You will literally feel like a different person with proper hydration. You will look and feel like a different person. 4 to 6 liters of water, salt your food, take a hydration sip, let me know, because trust me, you will feel like a different person. And then if you are ignoring hydration, it more than likely leads to poor digestion because you haven't got enough fluid in you to have homeostasis in your body, so everything else goes to shit. All your body's functions will be functioning suboptimally, which is not good for anything. So get hydrated and it will actually change your life. And 9 times out of 10, people who suffer with chronic migraines, they don't have chronic migraines. They are just severely chronically dehydrated, and that is their regular routine. So change that. It's really good teller when you say to someone, yeah, I drink, like for me right now, I drink like 6 liters because I like drinking water and I'm a decently muscled individual. So I drink around about 6 liters. Say that to somebody and they're like, how do you drink that? And it's like, I know you're dehydrated. Yeah, anyway, adjusting calories too aggressively leads to unstable performance. Yeah, you don't see the scale weight jump up or jump down in 2 days and you're adding or minusing 300 calories. It's just such an unstable environment, and that is why a coach's perspective on you and on your body is a much better way to conduct yourself rather than trying to do things yourself, especially because you can get so emotionally invested into the scale and whether it's going up or going down. Oh, I haven't dropped body weight in 2 days. I need to cut food more. I need to do more cardio. I need to do more steps. I need to be training harder. No, like 2 days is nothing. You want to see no change for close to 2 weeks before even thinking about sort of making a substantial food change. Okay, so yeah, that's that. So to summarize, pretty much that is everything covered. Pretty much, so you want different carbohydrate intakes on rest days and training days, because think about it, it makes sense. Why are you having carbs? What are carbs? Carbs are your body's primary energy source. When are you doing more? You're doing more on a training day, so you should have more on a training day. Yeah, really, really straightforward. Protein stays the same on both days. Hydration stays the same on both days. Fats should be slightly increased on rest days, not only to get your total weekly fats up to a nice level, but to account for the energy balance due to you having lower carbohydrates on a training day, on a rest day, sorry. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything covered. The next lecture will be a bit more back into the training side of things. We're going to go a bit over biomechanics and the individualization of biomechanics, because it is different for every person and there's different exercises that work for different people. There is no best exercise. It depends on you and your body and how you move through space and time and air. So yeah, that's the next one. So I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, please message me on Instagram. I don't think you can message people on YouTube. Message me on Instagram, DrewHope_TPA. And if you would like to be coached by myself at the Physique Academy, the link is in the YouTube bio, I think. I want to say, if not, it'll be in the description. Okay. So yeah, have an awesome day / night, and I'll see you in the next episode.